All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the January 24th, 2024 special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission relative to the proposed moratorium on affordable housing 830G development moving forward in in the near future in town. The simple summary here is that we've applied for a moratorium in order to secure another 4 years of relief. That's the word I'm looking for. Relief from the type of development that we've been trying to manage here in town with respect to affordable housing and larger and higher density housing. The way the meeting will work tonight is we will have a presentation and introduction by the first selectman. Once that's done, we will have a presentation and description of the process here by Sarah, our town planner. We will, after that, take town public comment. We will limit everyone to, what is it, 3 minutes? 2.5. 2.5 minutes time. We do have the buzzer here somewhere. 2.5 minutes time of commentary. And again, the commentary should be focused on the moratorium specifically and the future prospects of this type of development in town. We will not be speaking to or speaking about any current applications that are before the town or that are on appeal or that are being reviewed by the state. We cannot do that. So with that said, let me just read the public hearing notification here. Discussion of the town's proposed application to the State Department of Housing for a certificate of affordable housing completion, commonly known as an affordable housing moratorium, pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 830G and Connecticut Agencies Regulations 830G-6J1.
You want to just do roll call real quick?
Sure. Let's do roll call here. We do have a couple of commissioners that are not able to attend, so Dan Radman here, Kristen Nielsen, she is not here today. Kent Turner.
Here.
John Chris.
Here.
Art Casavant.
Here.
Chris Herring. He's not able to attend either. John Engel.
Here.
Paul Knag.
Here.
Tom Benton.
Here.
Alan Swerdlow.
I'm here.
Alan. And Christina Larson.
Here.
Oh, great showing. Excellent. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to the public for attending. Hopefully this will be a quick and efficient meeting. First selectman.
I just actually wanted to thank you all for hosting this evening's public hearing. Thank you to Sarah and Nick Lamonti from First and Moses for being here to help, answer questions on this application. And just to reiterate what, Commissioner Radman said, we can't address any public comment regarding the Weed and Elm property, the 51 Main Street, or the Hill Street property, as all 3 of those properties are under current litigation. So if you have comments on anything else related to our moratorium that we are submitting currently, we would love to hear your comments. So let's move on to Sarah. Okay, great.
Okay. Looks like everyone can see. All right. So I'm just going to do a brief walkthrough of kind of the bells and whistles of our moratorium application and try to have it be like a frequently asked question. So hopefully there are no other questions, and we'll just go straight to public comment. So first, what type of affordable housing do we have in town at this time? So We still are going off of 2010 census data right now. They haven't released for New Canaan in the 2020 census how many housing units we have. So we are currently still going off 2010 census, which is 7,551 housing units. About 3.6% of the town's housing stock is affordable housing as determined by the state of Connecticut and the 830G law. So we have 100 units at Canaan Parish, which were given their final CO in 2023. So that's our newest project. We have the Millport Apartments, which were 4 buildings built in 2 phases. That's 73 units, which was finished in 2018. We have the Mill Apartments, not to be confused with Millport, because there has been confusion on that, but so those are 40 separate units, and those were constructed in 2010. We have the South Avenue Group Home, which was constructed in 2000, and then the Schoolhouse Apartments, which were finished in the early 90s. Those are senior affordable housing units. So what is a moratorium? Why are we here? Just simply put, a moratorium exempts municipalities from having to hear 830G applications for a 4-year period. And so how do we get a moratorium? First and foremost, the town has to somehow increase their housing stock, whether that be through building affordable housing units, as we've done with Canaan Parish, public-private partnerships, or even 830G developments to increase your affordable housing stock. So there are multiple ways you can do that. In the case of New Canaan, it's all essentially been done by the town. So from there, the affordable housing units are awarded what we call housing unit equivalency points, or Q points. That's what they're called by at the state. And so essentially, to qualify for a moratorium, we have to accumulate a certain amount of Q points, and it's essentially 2%. So it's the equivalent amount of points of 2% of the municipality's total housing stock. So we have 7,551 units. We multiply that by 2%. We need 151.02. So we'll round up to 151.5 Q points. And so how those points are awarded are all based on the number of bedrooms. Is it a rental unit? Is it a unit that you can own? What type of affordability is it? Do you only make 40% of the state median income, or do you make 80% of the state median income? That all impacts how many Q points a unit can be given. So within our application, what developments have we claimed Q points for? So only Millport and Canaan Parish are involved in this application. So just to give you all some background on Millport and Canaan Parish, Millport started its process in the town in 2015. In February of 2015, it was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Again, that was built in 2 phases. So we're only talking about phase 2 in this application, which is 40 units. And phase 2 was completed in 2018. That's when they were issued their certificate of occupancy. And then Canaan Parish got approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission in 2018. It received a building permit in 2020. A temporary certificate of occupancy was issued for building 1 in December of 2021. And then the final project was completed in 2023. So how do we qualify? This is as technical as I will get. So essentially, as I was explaining before with the Q points, we need 151.5 Q points to qualify for a moratorium. In this case, the 40 units at Millport that we're using equate to 68.5 Q points. So then we're getting the rest from Canaan Parish. So we have 100 units to play with Canaan Parish. So we needed 49, which equated to 83 Q points. And that gets us to our 151.5. And so I'm not going to go particularly into the details of this apartment received 2.5 points or whatever, but if there are questions on that, happy to answer them. But that's just a very high level of what's within the application. This is the screenshot.
Sarah, it's Commissioner Turner. I do have a question about the dates on the occupancies. If what I'm looking at, it looks like 2/14/2018, is that the temporary occupancy, or was that the final?
For Millport?
Millport, yes.
Those were the final COs.
Well, just curious, if you use the date for when we got a temporary certificate of occupation, does that give us more time? Is that something that would be an advantage to us? Do we need more time?
No,
Yeah.
so I mean, this is just, that has no impact on the application at all, so we just have to prove that it has a CO, that's all. That's all we need
And
to
the dates of the CO don't mean anything?
So in the eyes of 830G, they have to have been CO'd before 1990, but other than that, no.
Okay, great, thanks.
And Sarah, Commissioner Cassman, if I recollect, once you opt to use a unit to generate a Hue point, you then remove it from future calculations. Is that correct?
For a future moratorium, yeah.
Yeah, and so therefore your selection here on using only partial on Canaan Parish will leave us some available Hue points.
That is the goal.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's kind of the bells and whistles of the moratorium application. What's the timeline? How did we get here? So just a brief history of moratoriums in New Canaan. In June of 2017, we were first granted a moratorium. After 4 years, in June of 2021, it lapsed. And at that time, Canaan Parish was not complete yet. In July of 2022, the town reapplied to the state for a moratorium. And in October of 2022, the application was denied by the state, and the town did immediately appeal that decision. And then that's all that had gone on. And then in November of 2023, when the new administration and Board of Selectmen were elected, they immediately directed town staff to reapply for a moratorium. So we compiled the application, and in December of 2023, we were ready to advertise it and start the public comment process, and a public hearing was requested. So that's where we are now in January of 2024.
Do we, this is Commissioner Canag, are we continuing the appeal?
Yes,
Yes.
that's coming up in my presentation.
Okay, sorry.
So what has changed since 2022? In that application, we were denied by the DOH specifically because they have ruled that we cannot, so if we had a moratorium in 2017, we cannot claim Hue points for units that were issued certificates of occupancy before 2017. They had never done that before. So, sorry, running the Zoom meeting at the same time. So they rejected 31 units that we had tried to claim in 2022 from Millport that had received certificates of occupancy in 2016. So we're actively pursuing that appeal. And in the meantime, we're still applying for the moratorium now. So the only substantial change in this application is we're using more Canaan Parish points. We're still maintaining our appeal and waiting to see how that plays out. So what is the timeline for a decision from the state? Simply put, end of April of this year is when we should expect a decision. So following tonight, no additional public comments are going to be accepted. We have to include in our application any written public comments that we receive. And then immediately following the edits to the application from those public comments, we will be submitting to the state. From there, they have 90 days to make a decision after confirming to us that the moratorium application is complete. And within the 90-day period, they're also going to have a 30-day public comment period where they can receive written comment. So end of April is when we'll know. And then just briefly, I know this question has come up a lot. How does this impact previously submitted 830G applications? So the applications we don't plan to talk about tonight. There is no impact. They were submitted before we had a moratorium. So if we are able to get a moratorium from this application, because they were submitted prior, has no impact on them and their eventual outcome, whatever that may be. So just to wrap it up, we've heard it a couple of times already from Chairman Radman and First Selectman Carlson, but please keep your comments to 2.5 minutes or less. We're hoping to only have public comment on the moratorium application. Please do not comment on any pending applications currently being heard before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And please do not comment on any proposed developments that are currently in litigation. Thank you all again for coming out tonight, and we'll turn it over for public comment at this point.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll start with the room. If there's anyone in the room that would like to offer public comment or questions. Yep, please step up to the podium, state your name and address.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Moore. I live at 315 Elm Street here in Canaan. First, I just wanted to thank you all for hosting us tonight. It's really helpful for folks in town to be engaged with and have a better understanding of how this all works. It's pretty complicated. I just had a question as you were going through. So the second moratorium application is using points from Millport that are from the second building, is that
Correct.
okay?
It's phase 2
And so those were completed.
in 2018.
Okay, yeah. So it's really such a shame, and I hope that the town wins approval to use those first points, because that's quite a lot of work and money that the town put in to have Millport complete. And it also then begs the question, if we are awarded the second moratorium, what happens to the remaining units of Canaan Parish? I don't know if that would unfortunately have the same outcome or not. I think that I appreciate that the application was put online this time. It was really useful to be able to go through and read it all. I know it was a lot of work, so I appreciate that. I don't necessarily have any other questions, which is I appreciate the opportunity there to learn more about this.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience would like to speak? Okay, we'll take it to Zoom land. Anyone on Zoom that would like to offer any public comments or questions? Going once. I think we're good.
Actually, I also may say, I know.
Just come back up to the podium for the microphone. State your name again.
Liz Moore. I was just gonna let you know, I think my neighbor Giacomo's son is got a concert tonight at SAC, so he was unable to attend, but I think he did provide comments to you online or to an email. So
He did. He submitted a list of questions. Thank you. Okay. First selectman.
One thing I forgot to mention when I made my introductory remarks is both myself and Selectman Carroll in our race this fall, both of us in that time period mentioned to the public that we would be pursuing a moratorium if elected. So that was part of our campaign. So I just wanted everyone to know that that was part of what we said we would do if we were elected, both of us actually. So.
Thank you.
Question, if I can make a comment. I just want to thank the people who put forth all the effort to assemble this application. I can't even imagine the time and talent into it. It is clearly a very detailed, persuasive, and I thought very well argued application, it's my opinion. But that, as you mentioned, First Selectman, this doesn't happen without leadership. So I want to thank you for making this a priority. I think I can say safely that the housing issue is a priority for the people of New Canaan. And, thank you for making this a priority. Clearly you were quite quick out of the blocks after your election to get this done. So I just want to thank everyone involved here.
Well, I'd like to thank both, our town planner, Sarah Carey. She was amazingly, she's a rock star. And also to Nick Lamonti and Virgin Moses for all their assistance in helping us assemble the application.
So one of the good points, additional point of clarification from Mr. Bramante. Can you just give us a quick breakdown on the timeline? We're having this meeting tonight. When does the state officially then acknowledge the paperwork? What's the duration of review? How long before a moratorium is issued?
Sure, certainly. Nicholas Beaumonte from the Town Attorney's Office again. So as Sarah pointed out earlier, at this point, we're going to stop accepting any additional written public comments after you close your public hearing this evening. And so at that point, our application will, we have an opportunity to review those comments. If anything in those comments would persuade us to change something in the application, we have an opportunity to do that. Given the units that we're submitting here and proposing, I mean, I don't anticipate, and I mean, Sarah can certainly comment on this too, but I think our application is more or less set. Regardless of the comments we're going to get. I think it's the strongest, these are the strongest units that we have in terms of thinking these meet the statutory requirements as they have in the past, similar to what we've been awarded before. So that all being said, really our timeline is just as fast as we can add in any written comments into the application itself. That's it. We just add that to the application and then we send it. We could send it by email to DOH, tomorrow if possible. At that point, DOH will acknowledge that the application has been received and that the application's complete. They generally do that within a week or two of receiving the submitted application. And then as Sarah pointed out, they have 90 days statutorily to render a decision. So
90 days after that 2-week period.
correct. Now, if for some reason DOH finds or believes that our application is not complete, then that would extend that timeline a little bit. But again, I am willing to sit before you tonight and say this application is very similar to what we submitted before, except we just swapped out some units essentially. So this is not going to be a heavy lift to finalize and to submit to DOH. And I expect we should get an answer within 3 months, if not sooner than that.
Okay. And then to be clear, relative to the, and I don't know if we can talk about this, but the appeal that's going on for previous housing unit points that have been contested based on the previous moratorium application that was denied. How does this affect this? Does it? What's the timing on that one? And what is the outlook on that one?
This moratorium application does not affect the pending appeal. As Sarah mentioned, that case is still pending. We have a scheduling order from the court. The Department of Housing just filed the record. That's step one. So everything that they have in their files that related to the 2017 moratorium approval and the 2022 denial, they just filed that. So now the order is 2 months after that. Actually, I have it right here. So our brief is going to be due on March 15th. And that's based on this record. I've reviewed, I mean, the record's thousands of pages. I've reviewed it so far, and I can't say at this point if I feel that it's complete. And if that is the case, then this timeline could get pushed further if I believe that there's something that DOH has not provided us in the record. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm at okay, I have the record now. I'm analyzing it to make sure everything in the record is actually there and filed with the court.
And if you believe that something is missing, do we have the opportunity to supplement the record?
We haven't, that's what I would move the court and argue why I believe it's relevant and should be part of this record. So that's an option. That's my number one on the list to flesh that out right away. But if there is no need to further supplement the record, the schedule that we have in place right now is our brief, our main document that we file supporting our argument is due on March 15th. The briefs from DOH and the entities that have intervened in the case, 751 Weed Street, Hill Street, those development entities, they have their opportunity to file reply briefs in opposition to our brief on April 19th. And then we have one last opportunity to respond to those briefs. That response is due on May 17th. And once that final brief is in on May 17th, the court will schedule an oral argument where the parties have an opportunity to appear, argue effectively what we said in our briefs. And then the court has 4
And how,
months to make.
what's the window for that post May 17th? Is there a definitive window when that oral argument will happen?
It's hard to say. This is at the dedicated land use docket. It's a specific section of the Connecticut judicial system. It's based in Hartford. Judge Edward O'Hanlon is the presiding judge up there. All of the 830G cases, most land use cases get transferred up there. And honestly, Mr. Chairman, I can't give you a good estimate. It's sort of with the ebbs and flows of how much volume is in front of him and when the court can accommodate a hearing.
Understood.
Typically, it's been within a month of filing the briefs, but don't hold me to that.
Got it. Mr. Lamont, sir, a question if I may. Assuming, just for illustrative purposes, if the appeal were granted positively by the court tomorrow,
Mhm.
and there's no appeal from the state to look at it again, we would then be granted as of tomorrow, we would be granted a 4-year moratorium on 830G applications. The starting gun would be when the court rules, there's no retro saying, well, you should have gotten it back in 2022, so we're gonna backdate it to then. So it becomes 2022 to 2026. So if you could explain it to me, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, good question, Commissioner Chris. So the relief that we're asking the court for in the pending appeal isn't to say DOH should have said yes as of October 2022. And they got it wrong. So New Canaan, you have a moratorium and you have had one since October 2022. That's not what we're asking the court to do.
Right.
What we're asking the court to do is interpret the law, 830G, in a way that we believe is contrary to how DOH interpreted that law, which gave DOH the ability to deny our prior application. So the end result here of this case, if we are successful and there is no further appeal, the relief we're asking the court for is to effectively order and find as a judgment, we're able to utilize those prior Millport units that were rejected and that we are subject to losing here. We could use those for future moratorium applications. So right now we have this one that we're planning on filing in the immediate future. We feel somewhat confident that the units we have here are very much eligible under the law. So we believe this is an application that should be approved. And then the appeal is going to take longer than this timeline that we're going to get for the moratorium approval.
So if I understand you correctly, Mr. Lamont, then our view is that the Department of Housing didn't use the correct math in computing things, and that you're trying to have the court say that the Department of Housing has to use specific math in computing these points, and that will be used going forward for our application, and I would assume all other applications that go before Department of Housing from other departments.
Yes, is the short answer to that. It's less, you're putting my
Not
lawyer
lawyer
hat on,
question,
it's
so-
less about the math, it's more about,
Applicability.
DOH is saying, okay,
Yes.
830G says we can't count these older units in the math.
830G doesn't say that. The DOH interprets it that way.
Correct. And we
That's
disagree.
my issue, yeah.
So that's our point. We're saying, Your Honor, who's right here?
Yeah.
So,
Of course, you
And the argument is further reinforced by the intent of the law. The intent of the law is to promote further development and further stockpiling of points to get you to the 2% threshold for a moratorium, which by de facto builds up your affordable housing stockpile.
That's right.
And this, what the town is arguing is that the denial by the state is contrary to that intent.
That's right. By its denial, the state is effectively, DOH is effectively saying, okay, you have,
Don't
This-
build,
don't front load it.
right?
You gotta keep building every period that you have a moratorium. Anything that you build over that 151 Q units you need to get each moratorium. See you later, you can't use them in the future.
Right.
How is that, how is that the intention?
Right.
I mean, we believe that's the argument.
Agreed.
Mr. Belmonte, I do have a specific question. Why would the applicants who, according to Ms. Carey, are not affected by the decisions here have a right to an intervener's comment on the existent application?
That's an interesting question, Commissioner Cassavant, and that's part of what I tried to convince the court in opposition to the intervention when those parties sought to move in. You know, the short answer is the law didn't favor us. There was a prior decision from the former presiding judge of the land use court that, I mean, it's a trial court decision, but he did find in another case that these development type entities in this moratorium type situation under the existing case law are authorized to intervene in this sort of a case because yes, and that was my whole argument. They're grandfathered in.
Right, there's no damage.
There's no damages, but they are, and the court effectively found that they're different than just a member of the public that owns any property. They are more equipped. They are fiscally equipped. This is what they do for a business. So they are the entities, the properties that they own in town that have not been applied for yet could be subject to further development. And if there's a moratorium, then that's going to preclude them from being able to develop those other properties. So really the
Well,
court was looking at, okay, you own other properties in town, you're an 830G developer, you have some interest. If in the future the town gets a moratorium, you're going to be out of luck for those other town properties you own. So you have enough of an interest under the law that you can come.
But in all frankness, isn't that the whole point of the moratorium? Right, whether it's this particular intervener or any landowner in town, because anyone could pull that ACE card and say, I want to build an 830G application.
That was the position we took. Mr.
Right.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Forgive me if my memory gets bad, but I remember a couple of years ago, there was a application by Brookfield. And there was an issue that it was decided one way for Brookfield and the approach was somewhat different for New Canaan. If you could comment at all on that, I'd be grateful. Thank you, sir.
Sure. So how can I say this? It was part of the reason why the denial was, in a sense, shocking to us last year, because in June of 2022, the town of Brookfield applied to DOH, just like New Canaan did a few months later, for a moratorium. In their application, Brookfield included units that were, as we said before, effectively front-loaded. Old units that were CO'd prior to when Brookfield received its first moratorium. So Brookfield and New Canaan are similar. Brookfield already has a moratorium. New Canaan already had a moratorium. DOH is saying to New Canaan, as of October, well, we're not going to let you use these older units that were CO'd prior to when you got your first moratorium. That was the justification, because they think that's what 830G says. But months prior to that, DOH found the exact opposite with Brookfield, because Brookfield's application did include those front-loaded units. They did include additional units that were built prior to Brookfield receiving its first moratorium. DOH went along with it for Brookfield, and then a few months later for New Canaan, they did a backflip.
Hmm.
And they said, well, you know, we have the right to change our policy. So we filed our appeal.
Just so I'm clear on the viewpoint, so let me give a simple math, because simple math guy. So for example, the number to hit is 100 Hue points, for example. And so buildings are built and housing is created, and let's say those, because of the size of the building and so forth, it's 120 Hue points are generated by that. So you need 100, so you take the 100, apply for moratorium, and you receive it, and then the 20 extra, because of the, let's say, the size of the building, you would want to use for maybe the next moratorium after the 4-year moratorium burns off. That's the basic idea.
We would hope, and that's
That's-
always how DOH has interpreted the law, and in other towns we represent, that's how DOH has awarded moratoriums. But now, under this newest decision, I don't think DOH has made a decision for any other towns. I don't think any other towns have applied for a moratorium.
I don't-
So this is the most recent decision DOH has made with the municipality applying for a moratorium, where they've completely 180'd on their policy. And now they're saying those 20 units in your example, those fall off the charts forever. You're never gonna be able to use those in a future application.
If we are successful in this suit against the DOH and the judge rules that we can use those former units with the preface that we do receive this current moratorium application approval. So that would happen in April, May. And the appeal case that we're in with the state, that happens in the summertime, let's say.
Well, and
Maybe.
then after we argue it, the court then has 4 months to make a decision. So
Sometime this year.
later in the year.
And if they rule in our favor, knowing we've already used 151 points for this one?
0.5.
Well, yeah. How many points would we then have in our stockpile currently that we have as a surplus and what we're arguing that we want back as a surplus?
We're close. We are not exactly at 151.5. And remember, when the 2020 census data does come out,
It's gonna
that
change it.
number is going to change.
Right.
Not by a lot, but it's going to change. But last time I calculated it, I think we're under 20 points away.
So we're $1.25 or a little bit north than that.
And would that include or not include units attributable to the in litigation applicants?
So the last time I ran the math for those numbers, if all 3 of those were built as proposed, we would get ballpark 130 or 140 points
Still a gap.
Just from those applications.
just from those applications.
In addition to the 120.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments or questions? One more call from the public. Any other questions or comments?
Hey, Dan, this is Jeff Stein.
Yes, Jeff.
How are you? Brushy Ridge Road. It's just an observation. It is a real shame that the prior board of selectmen did not deal with this proactively, because if it literally was just a matter of months with DOH changing their position between Brookfield and us, if we had been prepared to submit a moratorium when the last one expired, we probably would have gotten the same treatment as Brookfield, and we wouldn't be spending money on an appeal in Hartford now. So just an observation. I'm very glad that we now have an affordable housing committee that will be looking at this and proactively dealing with this issue going forward. But it's a shame that we were not in that position previously. That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sarah, does that conclude the meeting?
Yep.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Mr. Chairman, you might as well just vote to close the public hearing.
Oh, do we have to? Might as well. So that concludes our meeting for tonight. Again, this was a special meeting on the pending, what is it called? The Certificate of Affordable Housing Completion, known as the moratorium.
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? I vote yes. Kent Turner,
Yes.
John Chris,
Yes.
Art Casavant,
Yes.
John Engel,
Yes.
Paul Knag,
Yes.
Alan Swerdlow,
Yes.
Christina Larson.
Yes.
This meeting's adjourned.
Great.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
Taking
you.
another night out.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
That's what you bargained for, right?